Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we're taking a look at Go Collect's hottest trending comics for the week of December 3rd. Now, for those who don't know, Go Collect puts out weekly articles about hottest comics and trending comics. We got Trending Comics Again, which is a curated list written by Matt Tuck of books that are really starting to get liquid out there in the market. But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, doing those things, I would appreciate it. But let us get into this video here today. Now, the first book we have to talk about is a very interesting one, very different than a lot of the other ones we have on this list. But this one right here is actually House of Slaughter #1, Rabbit Comics Edition B, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 86th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this would be the book written by James Tynion with variant cover art that was drawn by Johnny Desjardins and came out in 2021 and would feature the first issue of the House of Slaughter series. As you guys all know, James Tynion in 2021 came out with his massively successful Something is Killing the Children series that was very well loved, very well celebrated, very well read, and that was actually able to spawn additional titles for the Something is Killing the Children universe. And that first title that was spawned off was this one right here, House of Slaughter, which actually spawned, multiple copies, but this of course is the #1 issue. And this is one that I think is a really interesting sort of case study as far as the, sort of speculation market is concerned. Something is Killing the Children is one of those success stories in terms of its values on the secondary market, in large part due to the fact that, a lot of people weren't necessarily hyping it up out of the gate. It was only until, we got to issues number 4, 5, 6, where that snowball was really rolling down the hill, and there was a lot of momentum in picking up those Something is Killing the Children issues. And as you know, FOMO begets more FOMO, and that really kind of caused the book to kind of blow up in the secondary market. But once we got the House of Slaughter introduction, that's kind of when, people were already, looking at this series, people already had eyeballs on this thing, and there was already talks about this particular, series having some kind of live action Netflix adaptation. Where I'm going with this is that House of Slaughter was a book that the market really had their eyes on, and everybody bought this book the week that it came out, which makes me a little bit skeptical for the values that this book could hit, because I think there's a lot of people who picked it up in terms of speculation. But we get covers like this, the variant sketch cover, and I think this is where, there's a lot of possibility for this book to maybe get some decent returns in the future. Anytime you have a book that is massively sort of spec'd on, you really do have to look for the rare variants, the 1 in 25s, the 1 in 50s, maybe even the retail store exclusives that nobody's talking about, because those are the ones that are going to have that rarity. And when the market is excited about this property, getting a TV show or whatever the case is, these are going to be the only books that, with that more limited supply are going to be able to command that premium out there in the markets. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. Of course, this is a new book, but only 84 universal copies on the census. Now, don't get it twisted. We don't actually know if, there's tons and tons out there. It's, sort of hard to tell with a book like this. But as you can see, 9.8s have 82 of those 84 on the census. Fair market value suggests $36. 30-day moving is $30. So, a very, very low risk play for a lot of these books in the 9.8 grade. And that's pretty good overall, considering when you go into eBay looking for raw copies, you're still going to have to pay around $15 to $20. So, the price to slab it right there is already, a lot higher than what you would get if you were able to pick up a 9.8 out the get. All right, let's move on now to the fourth hottest trending comic of the week. And the fourth hottest trending comic of the week is a very fun one to talk about, one that I don't think has shown up on this list in quite some time. But this one right here is Amazing Spider-Man #41, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 77th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book written by Stan Lee and drawn by John Romita that came out in 1966 and would feature the first appearance of the Spider-Man villain known as the Rhino. Now, Rhino is a very funny Spider-Man villain to me because I kind of think of him as sort of the cutoff line to the tier list when we're talking about notable Spider-Man villains. I feel like if you are less popular than Rhino, you are definitely in that C and D tier of, Spider-Man villains. And if you're more popular than Rhino, you're probably in that A tier. I feel like Rhino is kind of the Kane of WWE, legendary main event heavyweights. So he's sort of like, if you're more popular than Kane, you're one of the greats. If you're not as popular as Kane, then you're definitely never going to get to the heavyweight category. And I think of, Rhino right here as sort of being that kind of a character. Now, there was a lot of speculation for this book, at the end of 2021 when we were thinking, maybe they were going to do a Sinister Six plotline. Of Of course, we had Paul Giamatti, kind of insinuate that he was going to be playing the Rhino character at the end of Amazing Spider-Man #2, but we never actually saw that character's return. And so this book kind of, had its pullback like a lot of other books in this current market. But for that reason, the eyes are going back onto books like this. A lot of people are, Spider-Man collectors. They like characters like the Rhino, and they're seeing the prices correct, and they're thinking now might be a really good time to pick up this book. And as we dig into the numbers, let's take a look at some of the values here. CGC Census has this at 3,353 universal copies. That's actually a pretty surprising number. I mean, a lot of people definitely like to send in this book or the ASM books to get graded. 9.8s have 3 on the census, but let's talk about the 9.2s, which have more of a 30-day, sale that we can take a look at. 70 on the census. Fair market value suggests 4,500, but 30-day moving is actually 4,800. And you can actually see this is one of those books that actually hasn't had a pullback like other ones out there in the market. Now we're talking about the high grade. In other grade levels, we have seen a pullback for this particular key, but you can definitely see that, even in this market, depending on what book we're looking at, depending on what grade, there are a lot of keys out there that have been able to kind of maintain their value and actually even sell for more. I mean, we see this most recent Heritage auction in November sell for 4,800, whereas, a couple months before that, when the market in theory was doing better, it actually only sold for 3,500 effectively. And then down here at the bottom, let's take a look at the 4.0, 313 on the census, fair market value is 325, 30-day moving is 322, and as you can see, this is the book that has had the graph that we're kind of used to seeing, where it got heavily speculated on in 2021, probably a little bit of a spike, during the Spider-Man film, and it's had its pullbacks, but where it sits now is still above that of which it was selling for in 2020. And down at the low grade, you might see it slab from time to time, but if you go onto eBay looking for a low grade raw copy, typically you're still going to have to pay around that $300 price point. All right, let's move on now to the third hottest trending comic of the week. And the third hottest trending comic of the week is one of the all-time great Silver Age books, in my opinion. The one, the only Iron Man #1, up 16 spots, now sitting in the 56th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book written by Archie Goodwin and drawn by Gene Colan that came out in 1968 and would be the big premiere issue, the first issue of the ongoing series for the character Iron Man. Now, for my money, when it comes to all-time great Silver Age books, classic Silver Age books that no matter what, outside of spec value, this is going to be a bona fide key, for, the length of which we are going to be collecting comic books. This one right here definitely fits that billing, because I think the big premiere issues have, some of the best collectability when we're talking about, Silver Age comics. I mean, I think they're so satisfying to own. It's a #1 issue. It's got the character's name in the title. The covers are awesome. They all look really good. Very, very heroic poses. And this is probably, the best one. I think this one and the Silver Surfer big premiere issue are probably the 1A and 1B, or 1B and 1A, depending on how you want to look at it. But this has been a book that has been really consistent throughout the life cycle of these past few years in terms of the values. Now, there have been instances where this book did have a big pump due to the 2021 comic book boom, but generally speaking, this one did not get the same kind of, skyrocketing effect due to the fact that, for the most part, the speculation of this book is kind of done. I mean, in theory, we all know we're going to get Iron Man back in Secret Wars, but for now, there isn't necessarily Iron Man spec out there. And this isn't necessarily a key issue in terms of being a first appearance of a character or having, some kind of first meeting that is going to have some effect in a movie that we might see. This is truly a collector's book. Now, as Matt points out in the article, very interesting to think about this, but of course, we're coming off the heels of Wakanda Forever. We have the Riri Williams keys that have been, moving in the market, a lot of people selling them, some people buying them, etc. And, as these things do, there's a lot of correlation of, books that relate to movies, even if they have no specific connections to them. This one right here, of course, people are thinking Riri Williams. Maybe they start to think about Iron Man, and they start to think, hey, I don't have that Iron Man #1, and I've always wanted it. Maybe I should go pick it up. And that could be one of the reasons why it is showing up on the list this week. And as we dig into the numbers, let's take a look at some of the values here. CGC Census has 6,487. That is slightly high as far as Silver Age books are concerned. There's actually 2 9.9s on the census. Would be interesting to see what those would sell for. I actually do think that they could push that 6-figure range if one did go on sale. But the 9.8s have 35 in the census. We did get recent sales for them at the $24,000 range. Definitely a pretty high number. I think the Silver Surfer #1 issue has this one beat in terms of its values because, being that all black cover, there are less on the census at the 9.8 level. Down here at the 7.0 range, 604 on the census, fair market value is around that $1,000 level. And that's been pretty consistent for this book, holding at that kind of $1,000 level. You can see this is a book that certainly had its big spike up like a lot of things do, but it's had its pullback and is still in the trend line. And for the most part, this does a really good job kind of showing what the trend line has been for the Silver Age, where you can see, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. But generally speaking, over the years, we've been going up on this book. So if you ever, kind of want to just do a little bit of a gut check or a census check for yourself of, how's the comic book market doing, I would always recommend checking out Iron Man #1. Then 4.0s here, fair market value 475, 30-day moving 400, and then down at the bottom, you might see it slapped at the low grade from time to time. But generally speaking, if you go into eBay looking for raw copies, you're going to have to pay around that $400 price point. All right, let's move on now to the second hottest trending comic of the week. And the second hottest trending comic of the week is a very controversial one and is going to connect to the hottest trending comic of the week. So I think you guys can assume what that one is going to be. But this one, of course, is X-Men Annual number 14, up 21 spots, now sitting in the 68th slot. And what is the significance of this book? Well, I'm not actually sure. What do you guys think? Is this the first cameo appearance of Gambit, or is this the first appearance of Gambit? Either way, this is a key related to the X-Men character known as Gambit. Now, of course, we all know about this character, and I think it is very likely that when we get X-Men in the MCU, we will be seeing Gambit. I mean, that was definitely a character that was underutilized in the Fox films, and I think Gambit, in terms of his popularity, has a huge potential to kind of like capture sort of that pop culture space. And for that reason, I would think that he is a shoo-in to appear on the X-Men roster. So this book right here, and of course Uncanny X-Men number 266, are going to be books that really have, the eyeballs of the market on them. Now, there's been a lot of controversy due to the fact that, this book right here came out before 266, so a lot of people are looking towards this book. But we always have to have this conversation when we talk about first appearances. First appearances are just titles that point the market in certain directions. If you're somebody who likes Iron Man, a good place to start for you would be to look, at his first appearance and say, hey, maybe I want to own that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that has to be the most valuable book. Other people can, think to themselves, well, I would rather buy Iron Man #1. That's just a cover that I like more because I want to see him in the red and gold costume. So there are different factors here. And I think, the market will always value X-Men 266 more simply due to the fact that the cover looks cooler than this one right here. I know that that's a subjective statement, but if you are a fan of the Gambit character, I assume you want Gambit on the cover. But this one still is going to command some value. It's going to be the kind of 180, 181 equivalent, where there's going to be people on both sides of the aisle who, pitch their book over the other one. But I do think that when it is all said and done, the market will always favor 266 because for the longest time, that was what the market had favored. But as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. This one has been an interesting one. 5,000 universal copies on the census, 6 9.9s. We actually got a sale a year ago at the $6,700 range. 9.8s have 1,200 on the census. Fair market value is around the $230 range. Definitely a book like many others that has had the pullback since 2021. I mean, a Copper Age book is definitely going to feel that. I still do need to make a census for the Copper Age. I'm very curious to see if that census would look any different than that of, say, the Bronze Age index. But my speculation right now is that it would look very similar. And then, of course, 1990 book, not going to see it always slabbed at the low grade, but when you go into eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically you can find them being sold around that $30, $40, $50 range. All right, let's move on now to the hottest trending comic of the week. And the hottest trending comic of the week, of course, is the one that I was inferring to. But this one right here is Uncanny X-Men number 266, up 14 spots, now sitting in the number 5 slot, the number 5 most bought and sold comic book out there in the market today. And what is the significance of this book? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 1990, written by Chris Claremont. That would either be the first full appearance of Gambit, the first cover appearance of Gambit, or the second appearance of Gambit, depending on how you want to define it. Now, like I was previously saying with X-Men Annual 14, these books are always going to be linked together in terms of their values and their discussion out there in the market. Certainly, we are going to see Gambit in the future. Now, as to why these books are moving more recently, it's really hard to say. I mean, I think it could just be a combination of prices correcting. These are always going to be popular books. It's a popular character. Maybe people are getting excited about the X-Men animated show that is going to be coming out very, very soon. People are thinking that Gambit is going to play a big role in that. I think it has to do with the fact that these these are just always popular characters and they're always going to be movement out there in the market. But as we dig into the numbers, let's take a look at some of the values here, because I do want to actually talk about sort of the potential for this book. Now, universal grades have 18,405 on the census. That is definitely a lot, but maybe not necessarily a lot for copper age of a book like this, or I'd say similar to other books. And the other book I actually do want to mention is New Mutants 98, because I think that these books have interesting comparisons to be had. Now, 9.9s have 15 on the census. Last sale for 9.9 was back in 2015. I think if it went on sale today, it would definitely be a high four-figure book, maybe even pushing five figures. Hard to really say, but I think it would be interesting to see that. 9.8s have 3,300 on the census. Fair market value $750. 30-day moving is $800. This is a book that was definitely pushing that $1,000 price point in 2021 and has had that pullback to kind of where it sits now at that $800 price point. It's definitely a lot higher than what it was selling for in 2020, but it'll be interesting to see if it's able to hold that floor. I think that this is always a popular book. People are always going to want to get their hands on it. And when I think about, this book in comparison to New Mutants 98, where New Mutants 98 is currently valued sort of at that $1,500 price point, and I think about the tier of character, I think Deadpool is slightly more popular than Gambit. Certainly Deadpool has been able to command his own solo series, unlike Gambit. But I do think if I look at the values for this book being at that $800 price point, I think that the ceiling for this, could get to those sort of New Mutants 98 levels. Certainly it could be a $1,200 book or a $1,300 book in the future. So to me, it feels like this is probably a really good opportunity to buy it if you've always wanted it and you have plans to hold it for at least, 3 to 5 years. And then of course, down here at the bottom, 1990 book, not always going to see it slabbed at the low grade, but when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, you can typically find them being sold around that, $200 price point, depending on the deal, depending on the grade. Maybe you can find one for $150 if it's a little bit lower grade, but generally speaking, you're looking at that $200 level. Anyways, that's all for this video. Those were Go Collect's hottest trending comics for the week. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have any of these books? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next video.